Welcome, everybody. I'd like to start by welcoming members of the committee and officers and members of the public to our meeting. This meeting is being webcast. The emergency evacuation procedure is as follows. In the event of the alarm sounding, again, please leave the room calmly via the lobby area and the main front door of City Hall. Turn right, walk down the ramp towards the cathedral, and the assembly point is in front of the cathedral. As you'll have heard, there's a fire alarm test 10 o'clock every Friday, which coincides with the start of our meeting. So my name's Councillor Barry Parsons. I'm a councillor for Easton and I'm chair of this committee. And I'd like to begin by asking members of the committee to introduce themselves. Beginning with Richard, if your microphone is working.
It is, Chairman. Councillor Richard Eddy.
Councillor Shabalala, Bristol Central.
Councillor Guy Poltney from Cottam, substituting in today.
Councillor Izzy Russell for Ashley Ward, and I'm also substituting.
Councillor Caroline Gooch for Westbury and Henleys.
Councillor Zoe Pete, Avonmouth and Lawrence Western Ward.
Councillor Rawa Grabi from Hale Ward.
And Rob Logan, I'm a councillor for Philwood, and this is my first meeting.
Thank you very much, everybody. And welcome to Rob and Caroline. It's good to have you here. I will ask members of our officer corps to introduce themselves as and when the relevant item comes up. We'll move on now to agenda item 2, which is apologies for absence and substitutions. As we've heard, apologies have been received from Councillor Lisa Stone. Councillor Izzy Russell is substituting, and apologies have been received from Councillor Jerome Thomas, with Councillor Guy Poltney substituting. Are there any other apologies? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Wonderful. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. So now's the point when I ask committee members, do you have any interest to declare in relation to any of the items of business on the agenda today? Right. Wonderful. Agenda item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. There's one set of minutes to be approved, and that's from the meeting held on Friday the 4th of April 2025. I would like to move these minutes as a correct record. May I have a second?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Now I'm going to ask the committee formally, are you content to confirm these sets of minutes as a correct record to be signed by me as chair? Aye? Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on now then to agenda item 5, which is chair's announcements. This is an opportunity for me to make any announcements that I think are relevant to this committee. So, first of all, I'd like to welcome Sonia Fursland, who's sitting to my right. Sonia is our new Executive Director for Housing, and this is Sonia's first committee meeting in that role. Sonia is a distinguished leader in the housing sector. She's held roles in local authorities as well as in housing associations, and we're extremely grateful to have her on the team. I would say I think that the appointment of an executive level director for housing really demonstrates the commitment that this administration has to putting housing and homes at the highest priority for what we do. A few more announcements. We're launching a consultation today on changes to the home choice allocation system. That will end on Friday the 11th of July at midnight. This proposes making some changes to the banding for people on housing in response to some of the matters that have arisen from the MedAct report on the Barton House and the events surrounding the evacuation there. A few more announcements on housing delivery. This week we launched the Small Sites Aggregator. This is a partnership between cities and central government to unlock small plots of land for development. So Bristol City Council, along with Sheffield and the London Borough of Lewisham, have been selected as pathfinders for this. And we've really been leading this work in partnership with the Mayoral Combined Authority and central government. This is the kind of close working, I think, between this local authority, the Combined Authority and central government that we'll be looking to do more of as we seek to find ways of unlocking opportunities for homes which are desperately needed for this city. And these will be homes that are available at affordable rents for people in need of housing. We've also been moving forward with some housing developments. Redford Crescent in Withywood and Wootton Road in Brislington are two council housing developments that have recently gone forwards to planning application phase. So we're really pleased to see those move forwards. And I'd also like to mention that some of our recently completed council housing developments have been receiving awards. So at the South West Regional Residential Property Awards, our schemes at Lawrence Weston, New Kingsland and St Peters all won awards in different categories. And I think that speaks to our commitment to providing high quality homes for people in the city. Finally, I'd just like to mention the end of year figures for our Tackling Homelessness programme. So for the first time, we've seen the rate of subsidy loss. That's the amount of money that we lose on the central government funding for providing accommodation for homeless households. Subsidy loss has reduced for the first time, and that programme has delivered £4.8 million of savings against a target of 2.7 million over the last year. So that's dramatically exceeded its target. And we've also seen a very dramatic reduction in the number of families housed in hotels and other shared accommodation. So that was down from 160 families at the start of the civic year in 2024 to just 9 families in April of this year. So that's real progress and something that will mean better outcomes for families that become homeless in our city. So, that's the end of my announcements. So we're going to move on now to public forum. Now, up to 30 minutes are available for public forum. Questions and replies were circulated to committee members and were published on the website in advance of the meeting. Each questioner is permitted to ask up to 2 oral supplementary questions in total, if they wish. Supplementary questions must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. So entirely fresh questions on other subjects aren't permitted. Depending on the content of the supplementary questions, it may be necessary for a follow-up reply to be sent to the questioner. Thank you very much. So I'm going to begin by calling members of the public who've asked questions to ask them if you would like to ask any further supplementary questions. So as a reminder, you'll have 2 supplementary questions. Your original question and the reply have been published on the website. So I'm going to begin by calling on Fadimo Farah. Fadimo, do you have any supplementary questions?
I was disappointed that I didn't get the answer of the question that I asked. My question was specifically about whether the emails and other messages would be available for the investigation, for Barton House investigation, as he was the main person who was in charge in the council at that time.
Do you have a supplementary question, Fatima?
Yes, my question is, do I need to, is those emails and messages will be available for the investigation, the Barton House investigation?
Okay, so I think, so that's kind of a restatement of your original question, isn't it? And I think officers have done their best to answer about that. What I would say, I think, is that the terms of reference of that review haven't yet been set, and that will be something that will be done along with residents. And I would expect that any evidence that's necessary for that review to go forward should be made available to it. So I realise that's not perhaps a kind of the answer to your question that you're looking for, but I really don't know the sort of what specific evidence will be required for that review to take place yet.
Well, he was the one who was in charge in the council. My question is, if the investigation, because the emails and messages have been deleted, how are they going to find it? That's the question I want to find out.
I think we might have to go away and consult with colleagues on the answer to that one, because I'm really not sure myself about what the retention policies for the council's email systems and that sort of thing. So I think that would be something that colleagues who aren't currently in this room would have to answer. Fatima, do you have another supplementary question? I think maybe you've asked one, but the first was a restatement of your original question. So if you'd like to ask a further question, please do. No. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on then to our next question. That's Councillor Christine Townsend. Christine, you had two questions on the private rented sector. Do you have supplementary questions that you'd like to ask?
Yes, please. So my first one is in relation to the Hampton Road case. So this landlord pleaded guilty. It was a pattern of behaviour, and the things that this landlord did does relate to conditions on the HMO licensing licence. So I think my question for Chair and Committee is, if a guilty plea from an HMO landlord holder is not enough to trigger a fit and proper person review test, what would be?
Would you like to answer this?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to answer that. This will be one that I'll need to take away. I think on the face of it, the question you ask is quite reasonable, given that there has been a case and someone has pled guilty without knowing the full details of what they've pled guilty to. It's difficult for me to offer a review, and Tom Gilchrist, who is our head of service for this area, unfortunately isn't here, but I'm very happy to take this question away and provide a full response to you in terms of what the criteria would be for triggering a fit and proper person review for someone who is currently licensed as a landlord by BCC.
Thank you. Do you have another supplementary question, Christine?
Yeah, my second is in relation to data, really. So I'm not interested in officers going away and putting new data sets together, but what I am interested in is the latest set of data that looks at the number of licences that were applied for. I mean, it might be 12 months or 24 months, whatever. The number of HMO licences that were applied for, the number that were refused at point of application because the fit and proper person test was applied and they failed it, and the number within that same period that this council attempted or succeeded to revoke as a result of the fit and proper person test being applied and that person having shown to be failed by within their practices.
Again, if it's okay, I'm very happy to take that request away and to pull together that data for you and share it.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to. Yeah, thanks. Do I get three?
Do you have a further question? We haven't got that many questioners today, so I think we can flex a bit.
Okay, so I mean, my third question is again in relation to the fit and proper person test. So there is guidance that the council will use to put that policy together. If it's found that the practices of HMO licensee holders is deemed by this chair and committee to be so egregious that the policy doesn't fit around that, can you call the policy back and tighten it if you consider that the current policy doesn't serve the public, as we are all here to serve the public and not private landlords.
Thanks, Christine. Sonia, do you want to start? And then there's a question for the chair as well, so I'll answer that as well.
Very happy to take a look at the policy, and indeed, when the policy was drafted, any changes in legislation subsequent to that policy being drafted, or indeed any changes in case law that would require a redraft, and very happy to review and take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. And yeah, likewise, I would expect that the policy of this nature would be kept under reasonably frequent review. And so I think if there are lessons to be learned from the case that you've referenced, I think we should make sure that the policy is reviewed in that light. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. So our next public questioner then is Dan Ackroyd. Dan.
Yeah, I've got a supplementary to my question 6. Thanks for the pointing me to the appendices. It'll take me a while to go through them. My understanding is that the only report that lays out the future work that needs to be done is the risk report with the mitigating actions in it. But it seems that that doesn't contain all of the known work items related to the IT system. How is this committee meant to be informed about the total scale of the work that is needed and so be able to gain insight into how many years it is going to take to fix this mess?
Thank you, Dan. So there is there's a housing IT transformation program board which considers what's required to be done in order to implement the new IT system and make sure that we have the right data systems. I am conscious that board hasn't reported directly to this committee. So that is something that I think we should probably take away and look at getting a report to the committee. Is that something that we'd be able to do in reasonable time, Sonia, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm obviously recently appointed and will be taking over the chair of that board. Given as we're getting so close now to the implementation date of what you rightly acknowledge is a really important piece of work for us, is that we have appointed somebody to bring some external eyes on, just to make sure that all of the areas that need to be covered are covered, to understand any risks in relation to the implementation and our ability to go live and to make a success of the implementation. As implementing large IT systems have been fraught with issues, but actually on the face of it, it would appear that the programme has had a programme board throughout, that the scope of the project is well known, but we are now getting very close to implementation date, and particularly very close to some of our other systems actually going offline. So we are just bringing in that somebody external just to give us that additional assurance. And I feel like actually that would be something that would be helpful to come to this committee to provide assurance externally on the programme itself and our ability to deliver it successfully.
Thank you. Dan, do you have further supplementary?
Yes, I do. I've got a comment that information should have been at this committee 12 months ago at the very least. And it's a failure that it's taken this long to get to it. A second failure is Ms. Farrow's first question, the answer to her first question. She asked very clearly whether the emails would be available to the inquiry. She did not ask what you thought might be the terms of reference to the inquiry. She has come here today seeking to get an answer. You've just repeated the same evasive answer. Please, can she have a clear answer of whether the emails will be available to an inquiry if they need them?
Thanks, Dan. I think, as I said in my response to Fatima, I don't have that information. I don't know, what emails are retained. So we're going to go away and we're going to find that out.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have a further supplementary? We do have a bit more time.
It was along the lines of when you're going to start making sure officers are actually going to start answering questions, but I don't expect a response. So.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We're going to move on then to public forum statements. We've received 5 statements to this meeting, and 2 people have indicated that they would like to speak to them. The first of those is Fatima Farah.
After 2 years of campaign, I've had my first sunny holiday. I came back yesterday. I know some officers would like Barton House situation to just go away, but it's not going away until we get the answers that we need. And it's a failure for Bristol City Council, what happened to my community. I'm not saying all the officers are bad. Like, I've worked with Mark Kemp, who has been very good. I'm very rarely to impress some officers. My understanding is that local authorities, including the council, have legal and ethical duty to retain records related to emergency incidents for longer periods than at standard business as usual. Communications is ensured to accountability, enable through the reviews and support any future inquiry. Oh, sorry, am I reading the... Okay. Sorry, it's long. I've had a long night, but what I'm saying is we need Barton House investigation to go through honestly, and we need all the emails and messages available for the investigation. Barton House situation is not going away until we get the answers that we need. The officers need to stop undermining Barton House residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. And our next public statement is from Dan Aykroyd. Dan.
The response to Ms Farah's question is evasive and offensive. The question was not how an inquiry is going to be established, it was are the emails going to be available or not. Get a grip on your committee and get an answer. This bit in particular was offensive. This is not, from reading from the answer, this is not an inquiry into the working activities of the Mayor of Bristol. Correct. It'd be an inquiry into how this council cocked up an evacuation that led to people being traumatised because of the incompetence of the people involved. Full council was cancelled by 2:30. There was no information at all given to residents until 7 p.m. The evacuation didn't really start until past 8 p.m, past kids' bedtime. What the hell was going on all day? Did anyone in the Mayor's office try to prevent the evacuation from happening? I mean, it was inconvenient, wasn't it? The day of the Mayor's big speech in Kigali, in Rwanda, that he had this evacuation going on. I have reason to suspect that trying to manage an evacuation while hobnobbing into conference is likely to lead to delays in making decisions and communicating with the public. This council needs to hold a proper inquiry and not one set up to sweep things under the rugs, because £10 million was spent that possibly could have been avoided, and because the council inflicted harm through its incompetence. Councillor Parsons, you need to get a grip on your committee. You look like you don't have full control over officers. Just the last bit, shutting down the Housing Management Board and not having a replacement in place until close to 18 months later looks like an absolutely disgusting decision.
Okay, thank you, Dan. That's the end of public forum now. So we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the annual business report. This report presents to the committee the membership, the chairing arrangements, the terms of reference and the meeting dates of this policy committee for the 2025-26 municipal year. This is a non-key decision and the report is for noting. I'm now going to invite Rose Cross, Policy Committee Officer, to introduce and outline the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this report outlines the membership of the Homestead Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 25-26. It notes the appointment of yourself, Councillor Barry Parsons, as the Chair of the Committee. It notes the appointment of Councillor Richard Eddy as the Vice Chair of the Committee, the terms of reference for this Policy Committee, and also the meeting dates for 25-26. Thank you.
Do members have any questions for Rose or us on that report? No? Thank you very much. In that case then, what I'm going to do now is to read out the recommendation of the report. And that is that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee notes the membership of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 2025-6, notes the appointment of Councillor Barry Parsons as the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for the 25-26 year, notes the appointment of Councillor Richard Eddy as the Vice Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 25-26, and notes the terms of reference of this committee. Finally, that it notes the meeting dates for the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 25-26. Thank you very much. Can I take it that those are all duly noted? Thank you. Agenda item 8 then is the Finance Report Update. This report presents to the committee the Housing and Landlord Services financial forecast at period 12 against the approved budget at the end of May 24. This is a non-key decision and the report is for noting. I'm going to invite Martin Johnson, who is the Finance Business Partner for Housing, to introduce and outline the report. The Policy Committee team are going to display Martin's finance presentation on the screen. This has also been published online and circulated to members if you prefer to look at it on your own screen.
Thank you, Chair. The Period 12 Finance Update reports on the revenue and capital provisional outturn positions of both the General Fund and the HRA. The General Fund revenue shows a provisional overspend of 2.9 million with a capital underspend of 5.7 million against a revised budget of 23.9 million. The HRA revenue provisional outturn position is a 2.4 million overspend. I will come on to the reasons for this movement later from what we've seen previously, and a capital underspend of 6.5 million against a revised budget of 146 million. The reasons for the forecast over and underspends are detailed in the report, and I will take any questions on them later. Whilst the main report focuses on the forecast position at a point in time, it does not comment on the movement and direction of travel between reporting periods. This presentation discusses these movements between reporting periods. As a reminder, when we get to the slides, the top part of the slide shows the overall movement in forecast for the service, and the bottom part of the slide shows where within these services the movements have arisen. Could we have the next slide, please? General Fund revenue between period 10 and period 12 has seen an overall movement of a reduction in the region of 0.5 million. This is as a result of small increases against forecast subsidy loss due to demand being slightly higher than anticipated towards the end of the year, offset by a reduction against licensing salaries and increased licensing income. There are no risks or opportunities to report in this period, as any which have materialised have now been included within the ledger, and any which did not materialise have been removed from the log. Next slide, please. General Fund capital has seen a marginal increase of approximately 0.5 million between the two reporting periods. This is as a result of an increase in DFG adaptations, which is a demand-led service, offset by a reduction of 0.2 million in the housing delivery programme due to slippage on a number of schemes. Next slide, please. The HRA provisional outturn shows an improvement of 9.6 million in period 12 compared to period 10. However, as detailed in paragraph 28 of the committee report, this is as a result of a number of technical year-end adjustments not yet having taken place. These transactions related to the treatment of capital receipts and the transfer to reserves. Once these transactions are taken into account, the HRA would show a slight increase in the overspend to 12.5 million. The main reasons for the increase in the overspend over period 10 are due to increased voids and the impact of slippage in housing delivery, as well as a higher repair cost, offset by corporate overheads being slightly lower than previously anticipated. The reduction in depreciation reflects the impact of the period 13 transactions, which had not yet been taken place. With regards to the modulus write-off, whilst reviewing the financing of the capital programme for 24-25, it became clear that the way this investment was funded in previous years, i.e. through revenue contributions, means that the impact had already been felt and therefore no further action was necessary. As with the General Fund, there are no risks or opportunities to report at period 12. Next slide, please. Housing revenue capital has seen a total movement between the periods of a negligible 0.5 million reduction, being the result of quicker spend on a number of home improvement programmes, offset by further slippage within the development programme. So, next slide, please. So, in summary, the position reported at provisional outturn is a 12.5 million overspend once period 13 technical adjustments are taken into account within the HRA. It is, however, worth noting at the time of writing the report, capital accounting and pension adjustments were still outstanding. There is therefore a likelihood that the position will move further on final outturn. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. So now I'm going to invite members of the committee to ask questions and make any comments that they would like to. Just a reminder, please, that please go through the chair, and if you have follow-up questions or anything, again, still go through the chair. Thank you. And I'm going to start with Councillor Eddy.
Thank you. Martin, you're always very good. You do almost idiot-proof, actually, presentations, which is always very wise because, in my view, elected members are not very bright, certainly in my case. Could I just ask a question regarding the overspend on the acquisitions programme? Now, this is £400,000, which in total scheme is small bear, I concede. I've had a number of acquisitions in my ward, which I understand, of course, and that support. But at least one of them, and I'm not saying we should be looking at the lowest cost expenditure, was quite relatively, for my neck of the woods, expensive property. And I'm just wondering what some things clearly, like our homelessness overspend and various slippage in the affordable housing programme, is we can hardly really affect. But surely the issue of when and for what we actually spend money on the acquisitions programme, we can. So why is there this overspend there?
Thank you, Chair. So there could be a number of reasons for that overspend. When we pulled that budget together, it was on the assumption that we would buy a blend of different property sizes. So however many 2 beds, however many 3 beds, however many 4 beds, and that was determined by the need for those property types. We also set assumptions on the purchase price of properties, but also the level of works that might be required for them. We have limits on what we are allowed to spend on a property and what we are allowed to spend on the works, because if we go above those limits, they become unviable and we will not proceed. So it could be that during the course of the year, we have bought more 4 beds than we thought we would during this year. But next year we will buy less. The budget is the budget, and the number of properties we are going to buy is unchanged. It's when these properties, we're sort of largely influenced by the market as well, as to when properties come on that are suitable for us to appraise and then proceed or otherwise with.
Thank you, Martin. I think it would be a good idea at some point if we bring some information to this committee on the acquisitions programme and how that is going, the property types that we're buying, and how far advanced it is, that sort of thing. Councillor Shabalala next.
I'd like us to start just by all the positive news that you mentioned earlier on. And firstly, the introduction of Sonia. Thank you very much for joining. It's long awaited to kind of have your support moving forward. And, you know, going on what you had said, Chair, it's really welcomed that there's a review on home choice, the banding, obviously taking lessons from what we've heard from Barton House and other residents, those either on temporary accommodation and so forth, making sure that the home choice service is fit for purpose and it reflects the needs of our communities, those that are disabled, mental health, overcrowding, that therefore the recording matches the needs of the people, and therefore they are prioritized in the most effective way. So it definitely shows that we are listening and we're making those suitable adjustments. So I'd like to say congratulations, a big one to the team on that, and let's make sure that this consultation gets maximum engagement. Looking at the last consultation, we didn't have as much engagement. Now, for all the people that we hear complaining, finding themselves not in the right band and so forth, we need to make sure that this consultation reaches all those that are intended to feed into it. So can we have the reassurance that we will have a high engagement on this kind of consultation? And equally, it's not only just to the officers, it's also to the ward and the councillors, to make sure that their residents are equally engaged, are informed, so they can really feed into this. So that one is really good. Additionally, what you've mentioned, Chair, about the reduction of the HRA and the subsidy, that is a huge improvement. So clear, it shows that the ideas that have been put forward this year's administration are actually, saving, and that's the saving that we need. On a bit more of a dimmer light is that when we look at the potential overspend on most of the projects, as mentioned in your report, we may find ourselves not necessarily meeting our, interest cover ratio, which is really important if we aim to borrow, or should they be further large projects with issues. I would like us to put, at some point, to really think about a community promise. The promise that says that we will not raise our social housing rents on the basis that we have more spillage. We need to manage the spillage better. We need to manage the spillage better. The overspend on projects has a knock-on impact on rents, and we need to make sure that we manage those spillage, so therefore we don't pass on some of that issues to tenants. Maybe I'm incorrect on that part, but I'd like your suggestion. But I just want our residents to feel reassured that if there's additional expenditure on things that are within council control or support, especially when it comes to contracts and delivery of programs, that we don't increase the rent on their side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shabalala. On your first point about the consultation on home choice, it's not strictly relevant, of course, to the finance report, but we are looking to maximise the engagement with that, and in particular, we're looking to make sure that we have a representative range of responses to it. And to that end, we're doing a lot of engagement around it, including some in-person events. Thank you. Martin, would you like to respond on Councillor Shabalala's second point?
If I could, yes. So when we talk about overspends on capital, what we mean is that it's an overspend this year, not an overspend of the entire programme. The budget will remain the same. There wouldn't be additional budget. To take your point on raising rents, we wouldn't raise rents just because we've got a bit of movement and a bit of fluidity within the capital programme. The final point on ICR is relevant, and it's especially relevant going into 26-27 when, as we know, our interest cover ratio covenant is very, very tight. And if we do have a lot of capital spend brought forward in that year, then we could be at risk of breaching the ICR, which is why, as I've said before to this committee and to PCCB, we need to be really, really tight on our forecasting, and we need to be really, really diligent on making sure that we don't have significant amounts of forward and reducing backward slippage as well, because that reduces the amount of rent that we can get in, or delays the rental income as well.
Thank you, Martin. I'd like to invite Mark Kemp to come in on this point as well.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to provide some reassurance around rent setting. So we set our rents according to government legislation, which is CPI plus 1%, I think, for September. So that's how we set our rent. So as much just to provide some reassurance around that policy.
Thank you. Councillor Logan, you're rather silhouetted against the window for me, so I can't see you very well, but I thought I saw your hand go up. Am I right?
No.
Okay, that's all right then. We'll go to Councillor Pulteney next then.
Thank you, and apologies, Chair. This is my first time on this committee. It's also my first time on any policy committee at all. So, yeah, apologies if I'm asking very stupid or obvious questions. Just one observation I wanted to make in relation to my colleague's question, but it used to be the case, this is a very long time ago now, when I was more involved in the housing policy brief, that there was always a risk over a multi-year capital project that if officers were to get ahead, as in were to make more progress than was anticipated, that could very often be captured as an in-year overspend. And of course, very often it would actually save money over the course of the project. I just hope that officers would never be shy about coming to the committee and saying, we've done really well here, but that's why we've got a small in-year overspend. So I'd just throw that out there. It's always good to know or to have that context. The other was just in relation to the housing revenue accounts provisional outturn. And apologies, it's the item referred to as depreciation and bad debt provision. And as a newcomer to the committee, I was just hoping for a very quick outline, because that strikes me as being two quite odd things to bunch together, possibly not in financial terms, but in terms of what the committee would need to take from that. If it would be possible just to break down what that is, why they're together, and whether either sort of side of it in particular was responsible for the variance in outturn.
Thank you very much, Councillor Portney. Martin, are you able to respond on the point about overspend and about debt?
So on the depreciation and bad debt provision, I think it might be better to take it out of this committee meeting if we're going to get into the technicalities of housing finance reporting on that matter. Sorry, what was the other point? On the slippage, you mean?
It was about the opposite. In fact, it was about
it was about
progress on projects being
yeah.
reported as overspends when it was in fact faster progress than had been anticipated. Is that right?
Yes, and you're right. The thing that causes us problems, capital spend is very, very fluid, especially when it's a big development scheme, where to a degree in the hands of the developers and the site itself. It doesn't take much to find something on a site that that delays your spend. That in turn, as I've just said, delays the rental income. If we can deliver a new scheme faster, we would of course aim to do that. The issue that we've got at this particular point in time is that the finances of the HRA are so tight that we may not necessarily be able to bring a lot of capital spend forward, because it would lead to more borrowing, higher interest costs, and a breach of one of our covenants. But in an ordinary world, yes, you would want to get the money out the door as soon as possible, get those units up and get people housed.
Thanks very much. Guy, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you very much. And just in terms of, apologies, depreciation and bad debt provision in this context, what does that refer to?
Could we take that out of this?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I understand. Thanks.
I think that might be a point for how we report that in future finance reports. Sonia, did you want to come in on that?
So I'm going to give a kind of an overview around depreciation and bad debt, and I think it's helpful that Martin will come back and give a more detailed response in relation to it. But generally, and I'm using generalisations because I'm still relatively new here, is that for bad debt is that you would look at the level of indebtedness, so your rent arrears essentially, and then you would take a view on what percentage of those rent arrears would become bad debt, because you would hope over a period of time that some of those monies would be repaid, be it rent arrears or indeed service charges. And obviously in terms of depreciation, normally, and hopefully Martin will correct me if I'm wrong here, but we have on our balance sheet a number of capital assets that we own within our homes, such as lifts and other items, and they will probably be depreciated because over time they will need replacing and the value of them will depreciate. So we take account of that on the balance sheet through depreciation. But it's a fair question around why we would put bad debt and depreciation together on the one line, because they are indeed two different things, and we will take that away.
Thanks very much. So I've got Councillor Pete next. And then after Councillor Pete, I've got hands from Councillor Eddy and Councillor Gooch. And then I would be proposing to sort of move us on to the next item. So if anyone's got any other points they'd like to make, please let me know. Thank you, Sis. So, Councillor Pete.
So The budget is technically balanced, but it is highly vulnerable. While the HRA capital programme and the General Fund capital programme are in an underspend, the HRA overview and the General Fund overview are in an overspend. So I am worried that sustained overspends in temporary accommodation and compliance work could mean future budgets are only a stone's throw away from being in an overspend overall. So my question is, how are we going to safeguard against this risk?
Thank you, Councillor Pete. And yes, of course, I mean, I think, we are in a, we're in a very vulnerable financial position for many reasons. And taking the General Fund, for example, our Tackling Homelessness programme has done a huge amount to reduce the amount of subsidy loss and therefore reduce the risk to the council. But we are we're trying to respond to circumstances that in many cases are outside of the council's control, and they include rises in homelessness, which are driven by wider economic forces and indeed by central government policy. So there are risks to us that we are always working to attempt to mitigate. But a lot of those will depend on decisions that the government makes over the next few months and years as well. I'm going to go over to Martin though to respond on risk of this.
The only other thing I would add to that is, I mean, that's absolutely correct, but when we set the budget and the medium-term financial plan, we do take account of these risks and factor them into the budget. So whilst, if I take the HRA as a prime example, from period 2, 24-25 onwards, we were reporting an overspend. And it was clear that a number of those overspends were going to last longer than that, just this past financial year. They have actually been included in the business plan going forward, as well as actions to mitigate against those risks. So the impact, the impact of some of these things is within the budgets, but there are always additional risks that come along.
And we will be moving on to talk about the corporate risk management report in the next item as well. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gooch next.